Okay, welcome to Auckland English Research Center, IELTS Reading Passage 1. So we are talking about a passage. Normally for IELTS, you'll get just 60 minutes. In that 60 minutes, you have to read out the whole passage. That means you have to be a very good reader. And there are 40 questions that you need to answer, okay? So let's have an idea reading that. So today's passage is about aphantasia. Aphantasia, okay? Aphantasia. What is aphantasia? An aphantasia is a life without mental images. Oh, that's a pretty new topic, I guess, right? Aphantasia. Aphantasia is a life without mental images, means there are some people, they cannot imagine. They cannot even dream, okay? So we are talking about this sort of people tonight. Aphantasia. Okay, close your eyes and imagine walking along a sandy beach and then gazing over the horizon as the sun rises. How clear is the image that springs to mind? Now, aphantasia, if I click on that, there is the meaning coming on. The inability to form mental images of objects that are non-present. Okay, so what I have done here with all the highlighted word, you see there is a box. So if you click on there, you will get the meaning also. I have done this for you so that you don't need to go here and there. You get everything in the passage. So if you use it from your computer, you will easily get this. So aphantasia what does gazing mean? It means look steadily and intently. I mean, so deeply looking on something else. That is gazing. There is watching, seeing, and there is a word called gazing, okay? Now, most people can readily conjure. So conjure means produce. There is another meaning of conjure, and there is a movie called Conjuring, which is, they say, based on real life story. It's actually, there are 3 parts already, so a famous ghost movie, okay, that is Conjuring. But here, conjure means produce. Most people can readily conjure images inside their head known as their mind's eye. So I can also do the same, and I think you can also do the same. Like you can imagine, you can make an imaginary world in your brain. Like you may imagine about Las Vegas, you can imagine about Venice, you can imagine like you are on the street of Paris with your girlfriend or with your fiance or with your wife. You can imagine the whole picture, right? So that means we have that imaginary power, but most people doesn't have that. But this year, scientists have described a condition, aphantasia, in which some people are unable to visualize mental images. Okay, remember, aphantasia, in which some people who are unable to visualize mental images. Niall Canmore from Lancaster has always had a blind mind's eye. Blind mind's eye, remember that. That means this man cannot produce any image in his brain, okay? Now, he knew he was different even in childhood. My stepfather, when I couldn't sleep, told me to count sheep, and he explained what he meant. I tried to do it and I couldn't. He says, quote, I couldn't see any sheep jumping over fences. There was nothing to count. You see how difficult can it be, guys? Can you recollect? Have you ever seen any person who cannot imagine, who cannot dream, who cannot conjure any picture? Have you ever seen any people like that? Guys?
Never, sir.
Never in your life?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. But you see, it's okay.
But, sir, sometimes I guess it's maybe me.
Oh, really? It happened to you?
Yes, sir. Sometimes
Oh,
I thought it's me.
okay. Sometimes, not always, right? When you're stressed, I guess.
Right, sir.
Yeah, so aphantasia, it's not many people know about this thing. It's a very recent invention. So when you are preparing for IELTS, yes, you're also getting so many ideas, right, about new things, aphantasia. So let's move on. Our memories are often tied up in images. Think back to a wedding or first day at school. Well, I can still vividly recollect my first day at school and even my wedding day. I guess you guys can also remember that. So as you are remembering this, that means you have that brain power. You are not a patient of aphantasia. As a result, Niall admits some aspects of his memory are terrible, but he is very good at remembering facts. Well, though he cannot remember, he cannot produce or conjure any images in his mind, but he can remember, he can reminisce facts, okay? His reminiscence is so good. Well, and like others with aphantasia, he struggles to recognize faces. You see, recognize faces. You understand that? So he face even hard time recognize faces because he is a patient of aphantasia. Okay, aphantasia. Yet he does not see aphantasia as a disability, but simply a different way of experiencing life. So to him, aphantasia is not a disability, but simply a different way of experiencing life. Well, it's cool. He doesn't think it as a disability. Now, ironically, so what does ironically mean? You know, irony is a word, it's a literary figure where you want to say something, but I mean, you say something, but you mean something else, mean the opposite. That's what we call irony, okay, in a fun way, in a humorical way. So though this man doesn't produce or conjure an image, he's a patient of aphantasia, but still he's working in a bookshop and he's writing book. You see, isn't it an irony? Isn't it a joke? This is a joke, right? So in that sort of facts, you can connect these facts with the word ironically. Niall now works in a bookshop, although he largely sticks to the non-fiction aisles. Aisles, aisles, like a row of books, that's aisles. So he works with the non-fiction. Do you know what is a non-fiction and fiction, right? You see. So for fiction, you have to be a very good visualizer, okay? You should be hyperinthesia. That means you can visualize many things even better. Well, his condition begs the question, what is going on inside his pictureless mind? Look at the phrase, pictureless mind, you see? So you can make words like that. I asked him what happens when he tries to picture his fiancée. So I asked him what happens when he tries to picture his fiancée. Guys, this is fiancé, okay? Not fiancé, it's fiancé. It's a Spanish word, and you're going to pronounce it like fiancé. This is the quote. This is the hardest thing to describe. What happens in my head when I think about things? He says, quote, when I think about my fiancé, there is no image. But I am definitely thinking about her. I know today she has her hair up at the back. She is brunette. What is a brunette? What is a brunette? A brunette is a person with dark brown hair, okay? Dark brown hair, that is brunette. We can also say brunette, okay? Kind of golden color hair, that they are brunette. But I am not describing an image. I'm looking at, I'm remembering features about her. That's the strangest thing, and maybe that is a source of some regret. You see, what does regret mean also? Feeling sad, yeah? Well, the response from his mates is a very sympathetic. You're weird, quote, you're weird. But while Niall is very relaxed about his inability to picture things, it is often a cause of distress for others. One person who took part in a study into aphantasia said he had started to feel isolated. What does isolated mean? Far away from other places, buildings, or people, or remote. I mean, being alone and alone. After discovering that other people could see images in their heads, being unable to reminisce, you see the word reminisce, remember that from reminiscence, the reminisce, now it's a verb. Reminiscence, you remember the word reminiscence?
Memory.
Yeah.
Memory.
So now it's a verb, reminisce. I mean, to memorize, I mean, to remember about his mother years after her death led to him being extremely distraught. So what does distraught mean? Very worried and upset. You see, instead of saying very upset, you can say distraught. Hey, I'm feeling distraught. Now, in IELTS, the approach is like them. Instead of using simple word, we're going to use some formal word. Instead of using 2-3 words, we're going to convert them into one word. So instead of saying, oh, I'm very worried, you can say I'm distraught. Well, we are talking about a patient of aphantasia. Aphantasia is a person or is a condition when people cannot imagine anything, right? But now, on the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, we have a super visualizer. That means they can visualize anything. They can dream for anything. They're super visualizer. Now, at the end of the spectrum is a pile of color, you see, kind of rainbow, a band of color, all the colors separating, there's a spectrum, is children's book illustrator, Lauren Bird. Lauren Bird, whose work on the fairy tale, you see fairy tale. So when people are writing fairy tale, they have to be super visualizer. Like, you know, I also write fairy tale and I know how does it feel. When I'm writing some things, I am just imagining the whole world in my brain. I'm creating, recreating, making it bigger and bigger and bigger. So I can call myself a super visualizer. And there are some people, those who are a patient of aphantasia, and there are some people also, they are super visualizer. So the fairy tale hairdresser series will be familiar to many 6-year-olds. Okay, her career relies on the vivid images that leap into her mind's eye when she reads text from her author. When I met her in her Boxroom studio in Manchester, she was working on a dramatic scene. Look, remember, she was working on a dramatic scene in the next book. The text describes a baby perilously. Now, what does perilously mean? Perilously means in a way that is full of danger or risky. So a baby in a risky way climbing onto a chandelier. What is a chandelier? Guys, do you know what is a chandelier? Well, chandelier is, in Bangla we call them jarbati, a large decorative hanging light with branches. You see in mansions, palace, king palace, you see that chandelier, okay? So perilously in a risky way, she was climbing onto a chandelier. So these are the new words you see, right? Straight away, I can visualize this grand glass chandelier in some sort of French kind of ballroom. So what is a ballroom? A large room for formal dancing, okay? And the little baby just swinging off it and really heavy, thick curtains. She says, I think I have a strong imagination, so I can create the world and then keep adding to it so it gets short or bigger and bigger in my mind. And the characters too, they sort of evolve. So what does evolve mean? Evolve means develop gradually. So she could say to the short of developing gradually, but instead of saying develop gradually, she says what? Evolve. So that's the approach the IELTS examiner will expect from you when you're writing or reading. Evolve. I couldn't really imagine what it's like to not imagine. I think it must be a bit of shame, really. Well, not many people have mental imagery as vibrant as Lauren or as blank as Niall. They are the two extremes of visualization. Adam Jemen, a professor of cognitive. So what does cognitive means? Emotional, related to emotion, and behavioral neurology, wants to compare the lives and experience of people with aphantasia and its polar opposite. Polar opposite means completely opposite, okay? Hyperanthesia. Hyperphantasia. So there is aphantasia and there is hyperphantasia. So what is hyperphantasia? That means that the condition of Lauren, and aphantasia is the condition of who's that person? The first person. Okay. So there's a two polar opposite thing. Polar opposite. When you're saying polar opposite, it's really completely different two things. Aphantasia and hyperanthesia. His team, based at the University of Exeter, coined the term aphantasia. Okay, coined. When somebody is creating new word, they call it coining a word. So like Rabindranath coined many words in Bangla, the way Shakespeare coined many English words, and the way some people from University of Exeter coined the term aphantasia this year in a study in the journal Cortex. Aphantasia and hyperphantasia. Now, Professor Jaman tells the BBC, people who have contacted us say they are really delighted. Now, very happy, instead of saying very happy, you can make it delighted. Okay? Feeling or showing great pleasure, we can call it delighted. That this has been recognized and has been given a name because they have been trying to explain the people for years to their is this oddity. Oddity means odd. You see, there are some odd thing from oddity, a stranger, peculiar person or thing that they find hard to convey to others. How we imagine is clearly very subjective. One person's vivid scene could be another's grainy picture. But Professor Jaman is certain that aphantasia is real. People often report being able to dream in pictures, and there have been reported cases of people losing the ability to think in images after a brain injury. He is adamant. So what does adamant mean? Adamant means determined, firm, rigid, steadfast, iron-willed, unwavering, inflexible, resolute, uncompromising, unrelenting, okay? That means you are firm, you're not gonna moving from your statement. He's adamant that aphantasia is not a disorder and says it may affect up to 1 in 50 people. My goodness. 1 in 50 people might be affected by aphantasia, you see? But he adds, quote, I think it makes quite an important difference to their experience of life because many of us spend our lives with imagery hovering somewhere in the mind's eye, which we inspect from time to time. It's a variability of human experience. Variability means that varies from one place to another. It's a variability of human experience. We are done. That's our passage, guys, if you have any question. After the passage, there is a chance you're going to take your test, okay? And hello, if you have any question, guys, we're gonna end our class here tonight because next 20 minutes you'll be conducting your test and you'll be asking me your questions on our WhatsApp group. I will be available there. Guys, if you have any question, please ask me.
So what do we need to